Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a story of gods, mortals, and a clash that rages as fiercely as a river in flood. Picture this, you're standing on a dusty, sun-blasted plain in ancient Greece. The air is heavy with the scent of olive trees and the distant roar of the river Achelous. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear the sound of hooves and the grunt of a powerful bull. Hercules is here, jaw set, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the river god who stands before him, a god who can shift his shape as easily as the river changes course. You might think you could handle a fight or two, but this one, you probably wouldn't survive it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, where are you listening from? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The labors of Hercules. You've probably heard of them. 12 impossible tasks given to a demigod as punishment for a crime he can barely remember committing. 12 brutal, soul-crushing labors designed to break the spirit of the strongest man in the world. The king of tyrants, Eurystheus, is the one pulling the strings. Eurystheus is that one guy at work who can't lift a box but orders you to carry it up a mountain 12 times. And the first task, slay the Nemean lion, a monstrous beast whose hide is tougher than iron. You can't pierce it, you can't slice it. You just have to muscle your way through it. And that's exactly what Hercules does, wrestling the lion to the ground and strangling it with his bare hands. But that's just the beginning. Task after task, Hercules confronts creatures that seem straight out of a nightmare. There's the multi-headed Hydra, with venom so toxic it can melt rock. There's the boar of Mount Erymanthos, whose tusks can skewer a man in one blow. There's the Ceryneian hind, a deer with golden horns that can outrun an arrow. And each time, Hercules not only survives but dominates, his fame spreading like wildfire. People begin to see him as something more than human, something invincible. But there's a catch. For all his might, Hercules is still just a man haunted by a terrible memory. See, before the labors began, he was tricked by the goddess Hera into a fit of madness. In a rage he couldn't control, he killed his own wife and children. Imagine waking up from a blackout and finding the worst thing you could possibly imagine. You've done it, and you can never undo it. That's the weight Hercules carries every time he hefts his club or bends his bow. Every monster he slays, every beast he conquers. It's not just a task, it's a penance. A desperate attempt to scrub away the blood on his hands. And it's during these labors that he hears about Deianira. Deianira is the kind of woman whose beauty isn't just skin deep. She's strong-willed, sharp-tongued, and fiercely loyal. The daughter of King Oeneus, she's caught the eye of many suitors. But there's one who stands out, a suitor whose power flows as strong as the river that bears his name. Achelous. Now, Achelous isn't just any suitor. He's a river god, a being of elemental power who can transform at will. One minute, he's a man with flowing hair and a jawline chiseled by the gods themselves. The next, he's a raging serpent, coils twisting like whirlpools. And when he's really in a bad mood, he becomes a bull, a hulking, snorting monster whose horns can shatter trees. Achelous wants Deianira, and he's made it clear that he's willing to fight for her. Hercules, meanwhile, has been hearing tales of her beauty and strength throughout his labors. He decides to pay her a visit, hoping to make a good impression. But when he arrives, there's Achelous, already standing beside Deianira, arms crossed and smirking like he owns the place. Achelous is a talker, the kind of guy who'd probably leave a 20-minute voice note just to say, hello. He starts bragging immediately, telling Hercules that he's a mere mortal, that he's nothing compared to a river god. Achelous says he's the river itself, the lifeblood of the land. Hercules, he's just a wandering thug with a club. But Hercules doesn't back down. He steps forward, chest heaving, eyes blazing. There's a storm building behind those eyes, a storm Achelous doesn't see coming. And that's where the true battle begins. Achelous stands before you, his chest rising and falling like a wave about to crash. You can almost feel the river itself pulsing beneath the ground, a slow, rhythmic surge echoing his breath. His hair flows like a dark waterfall, eyes gleaming with that otherworldly, god-like arrogance. But here's the thing about Achelous. He's not just a river god, he's the river. Every drop of water coursing through the plains, every trickle that seeps into the roots of the olive trees, every thunderous rush that carves canyons through the rocks. That's him. He is the river. and in his eyes, Hercules is just a man who drinks from it. But Achilles isn't satisfied with just being a river god. He's the oldest of the river deities, the original force of nature, and he wears that pride like a king's crown. In his mind, the mortal should bow to him, not some muscle, bound demigod with blood-stained hands. Hercules, for his part, isn't buying it. He stands firm, fists clenched, jaw set. But Achilles keeps talking, his voice as smooth as a river's lullaby. "You think you're a hero," Achilles says, tilting his head, his dark curls cascading like water. "You think you're invincible because you've strangled a lion and cut off the Hydra's heads. But you're just a mortal, a fleeting, fragile thing. And me, I am eternal." It's the kind of speech that would probably work on most mortals. But Hercules isn't most mortals. He steps forward, the ground crunching beneath his feet. "Yeah," Hercules says, his voice a low growl. "If you're so powerful, why are you here begging for a woman instead of taking her?" Achilles' smile falters, just for a second. The air thickens. You can almost feel the tension, like the crackling of a summer storm building on the horizon. Deianira stands nearby, eyes darting between the two men, her jaw clenched. She's no damsel in distress, but she knows what's about to happen. Achilles takes a step forward, his chest nearly brushing Hercules. "I don't beg," he says, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I take." The wind shifts. The river behind them surges, a sudden swell that sends a shiver down your spine. It's as if Achilles is flexing, letting the land know just who they're dealing with. But Hercules, he doesn't even flinch. His eyes lock onto Achilles, unblinking, unyielding. This isn't just about Deianira. It's about pride. It's about proving that Hercules, mortal or not, is more than a match for a god. And Achilles can feel it. For all his boasting, for all his smooth words, there's a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Because deep down, he knows something he'd never admit aloud. Hercules is not just a man. He's a man who has killed monsters, beasts, demons. And if Achilles isn't careful, he might just be next. Then Achilles does what he does best. He shifts. His body ripples, his skin gleaming like moonlit water as he transforms into his human bull form. Massive, muscle-bound, and snorting like a wild animal. His hooves dig into the earth, his horns gleaming like polished ivory. Hercules doesn't move, doesn't even blink. So that's it. Hercules says, his lip curling. "You're just going to hide behind your tricks. What happened to I take?" Achilles charges, hooves pounding against the ground, the earth shaking beneath the force of his massive frame. But Hercules is ready. He braces himself, muscles tensed, arms wide. The impact is like two titans colliding, a thunderous crash that sends a cloud of dust spiraling into the air. Achilles rears up, his horns aiming for Hercules' chest. But Hercules steps aside, grabbing one of the horns in a crushing grip. The bull thrashes, hooves kicking, breath hot and rank in Hercules' face. But Hercules holds on, his fingers tightening around the horn until the knuckles are white. "Come on," Hercules grunts, twisting the horn. "Show me what else you've got." Achilles roars, his voice a deep, guttural bellow that echoes through the valley. His eyes flash, and suddenly, his entire body shifts again. The bull form melts away like a mirage, and in its place is a massive, writhing serpent. Scales gleaming like wet stone, eyes glinting with a cold, reptilian hunger. The serpent lunges, jaws snapping, fangs flashing. Hercules stumbles back, narrowly avoiding a set of fangs the size of daggers. The serpent coils around him, tightening, squeezing, every muscle a band of iron. Hercules gasps, struggling to breathe, his chest pinned against the serpent's crushing embrace. But even as he struggles, there's a glint of fire in Hercules' eyes. This is what he was born for. This is what he's trained for. He tightens his grip around the serpent's neck, muscles bulging, veins straining. "Is that all you've got?" Hercules growls through clenched teeth. "I've fought the Hydra. You're just a big snake with a god complex." Achilles hisses, his serpent tongue flicking out like a whip. The pressure around Hercules' chest intensifies, bones creaking, lungs straining. But Hercules won't give up. With a roar that echoes across the valley, he digs his fingers into the serpent's scales, feeling them crack and splinter beneath his grip. Achilles thrashes, his massive coils slamming against the ground, sending up clouds of dust and shards of stone. But Hercules holds on, his grip like iron, his eyes locked onto the serpent's cold, glittering gaze. And that's when he starts to squeeze. Hercules' muscles bulge, every sinew taut as he clamps down on the serpent's neck. Achilles writhes beneath his grip, scales glistening with sweat and river water, his coiled body slamming against the ground with enough force to crack stone. Dust rises in clouds around them, the air heavy with the scent of churned earth and the electric tang of impending disaster. But Hercules doesn't let go. He digs his fingers in deeper, feeling the serpent's scales splinter and crack beneath his iron grip. Achilles' forked tongue flicks out, hissing, tasting the air, as his massive coils tighten around Hercules' chest. You can hear the bones creak, feel the pressure building. It's like being caught in a landslide, every muscle screaming for release. But Hercules just grits his teeth, eyes blazing. "You're strong," Achilles hisses, his voice a low, serpentine rasp that vibrates through the air. "But you're still just a man." Hercules grunts, sweat streaming down his face. Man enough to crush a god. With a roar, he heaves against the serpent's crushing coils, using every ounce of strength in his body to push back. It's like trying to lift a mountain. Impossible, unthinkable. But that's the thing about Hercules. He thrives on the impossible. The serpent hisses, its emerald eyes narrowing. Then, in a blur of scales and fangs, Achilles lunges, jaws gaping wide. Hercules jerks his head to the side just in time, the serpent's fangs snapping shut with a sound like thunder. You can almost feel the wind from the strike, the sheer force of it rattling the ground. But Hercules isn't done. His arms flex, veins popping like ropes under his skin, and he squeezes, hard. Achilles thrashes, his massive body twisting and contorting, muscles rippling beneath his scales. But Hercules holds firm, his eyes fixed on the serpent's glittering gaze. "Enough games." Hercules growls, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Change back." Achilles' eyes flash, and for a moment, the world seems to stop. You can almost feel the power radiating off him. The raw, untamed energy of the river, the current that can sweep away entire villages, the flood that can wipe the earth clean. It pulses beneath his scales, a force as ancient as the world itself. But then, slowly, the serpent's form begins to shift. The scales ripple like water, dissolving into mist. The massive coils unravel, shrinking, until Achilles stands before Hercules once more. A man again, his skin slick with sweat, his chest heaving. "Impressive," he says, voice low and dripping with venom. "But you haven't won yet." Hercules wipes a trickle of blood from his brow, breathing hard. "Still want to talk?" Achilles sneers. "I'm not done." The ground trembles. You can feel it in your bones, a deep, resonant rumble that shakes the earth beneath your feet. And then Achilles begins to change again. This time, it's different. This time, it's not a serpent he becomes, but something far more primal, far more dangerous. His muscles swell, his skin rippling like water as it shifts and reshapes. His eyes darken, nostrils flaring. And then, with a deafening roar, Achilles transforms into a bull. But not just any bull. This bull is massive, towering over Hercules like a mountain. His horns are curved, gleaming like polished ivory, each one as thick as a man's arm. His hooves strike the ground, sending tremors racing through the earth. The air is filled with the scent of sweat and rage, a heavy, choking must that presses against your lungs. Achilles lowers his head, nostrils flaring, eyes blazing with fury. And then, without warning, he charges. The impact is like a thunderclap. Hercules is thrown backward, his feet digging furrows into the ground as he struggles to keep his balance. The bull's horns slash through the air, missing his chest by inches. Hercules ducks, rolls, and comes up swinging, his fists slamming into the bull's side. Achilles roars, the sound echoing across the valley. He spins, hooves churning up dust, and charges again. This time, he catches Hercules full in the chest, his massive horns slamming into the demigod with enough force to send him flying. Hercules crashes to the ground, the wind knocked out of him, stars exploding behind his eyes. The bull looms over him, eyes wild, breath steaming in the cool air. But Hercules isn't beaten yet, not by a long shot. He pushes himself up, every muscle screaming in protest. The bull lowers its head again, horns glinting like blades in the fading light. But this time, Hercules is ready. When the bull charges, Hercules sidesteps, grabbing one of the horns in both hands. The force of the blow nearly rips his arms out of their sockets, but he holds on, teeth gritted, veins bulging. The bull thrashes, its massive body straining against Hercules' grip, muscles rippling beneath its hide. But Hercules won't let go. With a roar, he wrenches the horn to the side. The bull bellows, stumbling, its hooves scraping against the ground. Hercules plants his feet, digs in, and pulls with all his might. There's a sickening crack. The horn snaps off in Hercules' hands, a massive, curved weapon dripping with blood. The bull staggers, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. For a moment, it just stands there, panting, blood trickling down its face. Then, slowly, the massive body shudders, the bull's form dissolving like mist. And Achilles is there again, human once more, crumpled on the ground, clutching the stump of his shattered horn. His eyes are wild, haunted. He looks up at Hercules, chest heaving, blood smeared across his jaw. You broke it. He gasps, voice thick with pain. Hercules tosses the horn aside, his own chest heaving. You're right, he says, wiping sweat from his brow. I'm just a man. He steps closer, his shadow falling over Achilles like a storm cloud. But I don't need to be a god to beat you. Achilles slumps to the ground, head bowed, the weight of his defeat pressing down on him like the river itself. And somewhere in the distance, the river Achilles churns and rages, its waters dark and wild, as if the very earth is mourning the god's fall. The dust settles. Hercules stands over Achilles, chest heaving, fists clenched, every muscle still taut with adrenaline. The shattered horn lies at his feet, glistening with blood and river water, a twisted trophy of his victory. Achilles kneels in the dirt, shoulders slumped, hair hanging in wet, tangled strands across his face. For a moment, all you can hear is the river rushing nearby, its waters churning and frothing, as if echoing the god's rage and humiliation. But the battle isn't over yet. Not really. Achilles might be beaten, but his pride isn't. He pushes himself to his feet, his jaw set, eyes burning with defiance. You think this is over? He snarls, wiping blood from his mouth. You think breaking a single horn makes you a god? Hercules smirks, rolling his shoulders, the muscles rippling beneath his scarred skin. No, he says, his voice calm, almost casual. But it does make you less of one. Achilles' face twists with fury, his nostrils flaring. For a heartbeat, you think he's going to lunge again, that he's going to shift back into that monstrous bull and try to finish what he started. But he doesn't. He just stands there, fists clenched, his chest rising and falling with each ragged breath. And then, in a voice dripping with venom, he spits, "You're a fool, Hercules. A fool who doesn't understand what he's just done." The words hang in the air, heavy as storm clouds. Deianira steps forward, her brow furrowed, her dark eyes flicking between the two men. "Achilles," she says, her voice firm but not unkind. "It's over. You lost." Achilles turns to her, his jaw tight, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "I lost," he sneers. "Oh no, Deianira, he's the one who lost." Hercules crosses his arms, brow arched. "Is that so?" Achilles chuckles, low and bitter. "You just tore off the horn of a god," he says, stepping closer, his eyes locking onto Hercules. "Do you even know what that means?" Hercules doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The horn still lies at his feet, its jagged edge glistening like a shard of bone. And that's when Achilles bends down, scoops up the broken horn, and holds it aloft. "This," he says, his voice ringing out across the valley, "isn't just a horn. It's a symbol of my power. My strength. You took it from me, yes, but now, it's yours." Achilles extends the horn toward Hercules, his dark eyes glinting. "Take it," he says, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous murmur. "Go on. See what you've won." Hercules reaches out, his massive hand closing around the horn. The moment he touches it, a strange sensation ripples through him, like the cool rush of a river, the surge of a flood. The horn feels heavy in his grip, almost too heavy, as if it contains all the power of the river god himself. "Do you feel it?" Achilles asks, his lips curling into a bitter smile. "That's the horn of plenty, the cornucopia, a source of endless abundance, food, drink, riches, anything you could ever desire. But it's a double-edged sword, Hercules. You think you're strong enough to wield it. Fine. But remember this, what you take from a god, the gods will take back tenfold." Hercules narrows his eyes. "Is that a threat?" Achilles steps closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a promise." And then, without another word, he turns and walks away. The river god's shoulders slump, his hair hanging in wet, tangled strands down his back. As he reaches the river's edge, his body shimmers, the air around him rippling like heat waves. And then, with a final, bitter glance over his shoulder, he dissolves into mist, slipping back into the river that bears his name. Hercules watches him go, the broken horn still clutched in his hand. For a moment, he just stands there, staring at the rushing water, feeling the weight of Achilles' words settle like a stone in his gut. Deianira steps forward, her gaze fixed on the horn. "What do you think he meant?" Hercules shakes his head, his jaw clenched. "Doesn't matter. he mutters, tossing the horn to the ground. He lost. That's all that matters. But even as he says it, there's a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Because Achilles might be gone, but his warning lingers, like the distant roll of thunder, a storm waiting to break. Deianira reaches down, picks up the horn. So this is the cornucopia, she says, running her fingers along its smooth, polished surface. Endless abundance, endless gifts. Seems like a pretty powerful prize. Hercules grunts, rubbing the back of his neck. Or a curse. Deianira frowns, her dark eyes searching his face. You really think Achilles was serious about the gods taking back what you took from him? Hercules doesn't answer. But deep down, he can't shake the feeling that he's just opened a door he can't close. That he's taken something he can't give back. And somewhere far away, the river Achilles roars, its waters dark and wild, as if the god himself is still watching. The river Achilles rumbles, its waters churning as if the very current remembers the battle. But for Hercules and Deianira, the dust has settled, and the silence is as heavy as the broken horn resting in Deianira's hands. She turns it over, studying its smooth curve, the glint of its ivory surface. It's a strange thing, both beautiful and ominous, like a trophy carved from the bones of a fallen god. Do you really believe it? Deianira asks, her voice soft. That this thing can give endless abundance. Hercules shrugs, his shoulders rolling beneath his lion skin cloak. Achilles wasn't exactly the sharing type. If he had something like that, he wouldn't have given it up without a fight. Deianira nods, but her fingers continue to trace the horn's edge, her brow furrowed. And if he wasn't lying, if the gods really do take back what you took from him? Hercules grunts, his jaw tightening. Let them try. But even as he says it, there's a flicker of unease behind his eyes. The gods aren't known for forgiving slights, especially when it involves stealing power from one of their own. But Hercules has faced worse things than a river god's curse. He's battled lions with skin tougher than steel, strangled hydras with poisonous breath, and wrestled death itself to save the soul of a friend. What's one more god with a grudge? Still, Deianira's eyes linger on the horn, her lips pressed into a thin line. So, what do we do with it? Hercules sighs, rubbing the back of his neck. We take it with us. Maybe someone in the next town knows more about it. The next town is a dusty speck of a village, a cluster of thatched huts huddled beneath the shadow of a craggy mountain. Farmers shuffle by with carts full of vegetables and sacks of grain, their faces drawn and tired. The air is thick with the scent of baked bread and burning olive oil, and somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats mournfully. Hercules and Deianira step into the village square, the horn wrapped in a rough cloth and slung over Hercules' shoulder like a sack of grain. Eyes follow them as they pass, curious, wary, some outright fearful. It's not every day a demigod and his bride walk into town, carrying a trophy from a defeated god. They find the local inn easily enough, a low wooden building with a sagging roof and a sign that creaks in the wind. Inside, the air is cool and dim, the scent of stale wine and roasted meat mingling in the gloom. Hercules slams a few coins on the counter, orders some food, and takes a seat by the hearth, the horn resting at his feet like a sleeping beast. The innkeeper, a wary man with a crooked nose and a thin, patchy beard, shuffles over with 2 mugs of watered down wine. He glances at the horn, his eyes widening. That wouldn't be what I think it is, would it? Hercules leans back, crossing his arms over his chest. Depends. What do you think it is? The innkeeper swallows, his Adam's apple bobbing. Looks like the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. Deianira leans forward, her eyes sharp. You know about it. The innkeeper nods, his gaze darting nervously between them. Everyone's heard of it. Belongs to the river god Achilles. Or used to. His voice drops to a whisper. They say whoever holds the horn can call forth any food or drink they desire. Enough to feed an army. Enough to drown a kingdom in wine. Hercules raises an eyebrow. Sounds like a lot of power for one horn. The innkeeper nods again, licking his lips. A lot of power and a lot of trouble. People have fought and died over that thing. Kings, generals, gods. You think Achilles was the first one to lose it? Deianira frowns, her fingers tightening around her mug. What happened to them? The innkeeper leans in closer, his breath hot and sour. The gods took back what was stolen, he says, his voice dropping even lower. And they didn't just take the horn. They took everything. A shiver runs down Deianira's spine. She glances at Hercules, who just grunts and takes a long swig of wine. But the innkeeper's words hang in the air like the scent of rotting fruit. The gods took everything. Outside, the wind picks up, howling through the village like a wolf on the prowl. A storm is brewing. The kind of storm that smells like wet earth and crackling lightning. The kind that makes people lock their doors and whisper prayers to gods they haven't spoken to in years. Later that night, as Hercules and Deianira lie on a straw mattress in the corner of the inn, the wind howling outside, the horn rests between them like a sleeping beast. Deianira can't take her eyes off it. The way it glows faintly in the dim light, its smooth surface almost pulsing with some strange, internal rhythm. What if he was right? She whispers, her voice barely audible over the wind. What if the gods come for it? Hercules rolls onto his back, staring up at the dark, thatched ceiling. Let them come, he mutters, his jaw clenched. They've come for me before. But Deianira doesn't sleep. She just lies there, eyes fixed on the horn, listening to the wind outside as it howls like a pack of wolves, as if the very earth itself is mourning something lost. Or perhaps warning of something yet to come. And somewhere far away, the river Achilles rushes and roars, its waters rising, churning with fury. Because gods don't forget. And they certainly don't forgive. Morning breaks with a red sun bleeding over the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows across the village. The air is thick and heavy, as if the storm from the night before still lingers, hiding in the folds of the mountains. Hercules wakes with a start, his skin clammy, the scent of rain still hanging in the air. Beside him, Deianira is already up, sitting cross, legged with the horn cradled in her lap. She's staring at it, eyes dark and unreadable. The horn of plenty seems to pulse in the dim light, its smooth surface gleaming like polished ivory. Hercules watches her, his jaw clenched. You haven't slept, he says, more statement than question. Deianira doesn't look up. I keep thinking about what that innkeeper said. She murmurs, her fingers tracing the curve of the horn. The gods took everything. Everything. Hercules grunts, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. It's just a story, he says, rubbing a hand over his unshaven jaw. People love to scare themselves with tales of curses and revenge. Deianira's eyes flick up to meet his, and for a moment, the room feels colder. But what if it's not just a story? What if we're holding something we shouldn't? Hercules says nothing. Outside, the village stirs to life, roosters crowing, children's voices rising and falling like waves. But beneath it all, there's an unease, a tension thrumming just beneath the surface, like a river about to overflow. They decide to leave the village. Hercules doesn't say it outright, but there's a sense that staying too long in one place is dangerous now. The horn is too recognizable, too valuable. It draws eyes, whispers, questions. And those questions could draw the attention of something far worse. They set off on foot, the road winding through a dense forest of cypress and olive trees. The air is cooler here, the shadows deeper, the silence heavy and thick. Birds chatter overhead, but even they seem to keep the distance, their voices hushed, as if the very woods know what Hercules and Deianira carry. The path is rough and narrow, the ground damp and soft beneath their sandals. Deianira walks a few paces ahead, the horn slung across her back like a quiver. Hercules follows close behind, his eyes scanning the trees, every muscle tense. It's not just the threat of bandits or wild animals. It's something deeper, something that gnaws at the edges of his mind, the feeling that they're being watched. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher, filtering through the canopy in broken shards of gold. The air grows warmer, the scent of pine thick and heady. They stop at a small clearing to rest, the horn resting between them like an uninvited guest. Deianira pulls a piece of bread from her pack, tearing it in half and handing one piece to Hercules. Do you think it really works? She asks, nodding to the horn. Hercules takes a bite of the bread, chews thoughtfully. I don't know, he admits, crumbs falling from his lips. But Achilles seemed pretty convinced it does. Deianira watches him, her brow furrowed. Would you try it? I mean, if it could really give us anything we want. Hercules leans back against a tree, arms folded over his chest. Maybe. Or maybe that's exactly what it wants. A trap disguised as a gift. Deianira says nothing, but her eyes linger on the horn. The way it seems to glow faintly, even in the shadow of the trees. Like it's calling to her. They continue down the road, the forest deepening, the air growing cooler. Shadows stretch longer, the sky darkening with the approach of dusk. The road winds and twists, the trees pressing in closer, their branches creaking like old bones. And that's when they hear it. a rustling in the bushes, a low guttural growl. Hercules stops, his body going rigid. Deianira freezes beside him, her eyes scanning the trees. The growl comes again, closer this time. Then, without warning, a massive boar charges out of the underbrush, tusks gleaming like daggers, eyes wild and rolling. Hercules lunges forward, grabbing a thick branch from the ground. The boar barrels toward him, its hooves thundering against the earth. Hercules swings the branch, the wood cracking against the boar's skull. The creature squeals, its tusks slicing through the air as it wheels around, blood streaming from its nose. Deianira stumbles back, the horn slipping from her shoulder and landing with a dull thud in the dirt. The boar's eyes lock onto it, and for a moment, its rage seems to dissipate, its wild gaze fixed on the horn. Hercules takes the opportunity, leaping forward and bringing the branch down hard. The boar collapses to the ground, its legs kicking feebly before going still. Panting, Hercules drops the branch, his chest heaving. Deianira rushes over, her hands shaking as she picks up the horn. "Did you see that?" she whispers, eyes wide. It looked at the horn, like it knew what it was. Hercules wipes sweat from his brow, his jaw clenched. Or like it was sent for it. Deianira's eyes dart around the forest, the shadows deepening. The trees swaying as the wind picks up. The air smells of blood and fear, the scent of the boar's carcass heavy and sour. And somewhere, far off in the trees, there's a rustling. Like something, or someone, is moving closer. "We need to keep moving," Hercules says, his voice low and urgent. "Now." Deianira nods, slinging the horn over her back again. Her fingers tight around the strap. They set off down the road, their footsteps quick and urgent, the trees looming like sentinels in the fading light. But even as they walk, that feeling persists. That cold, prickling sensation at the back of the neck, like eyes watching from the dark. Hercules keeps glancing over his shoulder, his hand resting on the hilt of his club. The wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it a low, mournful sound. A sound that almost sounds like a voice. And somewhere, far away, the river Achelous roars, its waters surging, the current pulling and tearing at the banks, as if the river itself is trying to break free. Because Achelous isn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Night falls like a velvet curtain, swallowing the forest in darkness. The wind whispers through the trees, a low, haunting murmur that raises the hairs on the back of your neck. Hercules and Deianira press on, their steps quick and urgent, the path barely visible beneath the pale sliver of moonlight. The horn swings at Deianira's back, its smooth surface catching the occasional glint of silver light. They reach a small clearing, the ground littered with dry leaves and twisted roots. Deianira slumps against a tree, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "We need to rest," she says, voice tight. Just for a moment. Hercules scans the surrounding woods, eyes narrowed. "Not here," he mutters. "We're too exposed." Deianira closes her eyes, pressing the heels of her hands to her temples. The horn is warm against her back, almost uncomfortably so. It's as if it's absorbing the heat of her body, or perhaps generating its own. She can feel a strange vibration, a rhythmic pulsing that seems to match the beat of her own heart. "What if it's calling to them?" she whispers. Hercules turns sharply. "What?" "The horn," Deianira says, opening her eyes. "What if it's calling to them? The gods, the creatures, whatever else Achilles warned about." Hercules clenches his jaw, his eyes flicking to the horn. "It's a piece of Achilles," he says slowly. "Maybe it's more than that." Before Deianira can respond, the air grows heavy. A strange, metallic scent hangs thick around them, like copper and wet earth. The wind picks up, rustling the leaves, and then the ground beneath them trembles. Deianira pushes herself away from the tree, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Did you feel that?" Hercules nods, his hand dropping to the hilt of his club. The ground shakes again, a slow rolling tremor that makes the trees sway and creak. A shadow moves at the edge of the clearing, a tall, hulking shape with eyes that glisten like polished stone. Then another shadow appears, and another. Shapes emerge from the darkness, massive and silent, their eyes gleaming like lanterns in the night. Deianira's breath catches in her throat. Centaur warriors. They step into the clearing, their hooves crunching against the dry leaves. There are 5 of them, each as tall as a man and twice as broad, their human torsos rising from powerful equine bodies. Their faces are stern, eyes dark and unblinking, muscles coiled like taut ropes beneath bronzed skin. The leader steps forward, his chest adorned with a necklace of teeth and claws. "You carry the horn of Achilles," he says, his voice deep and gravelly, echoing through the clearing. That which was stolen from a god. Deianira swallows, her fingers gripping the strap of the horn. We didn't steal it, she says, voice trembling. Hercules won it in a fair fight. The centaur's eyes flick to Hercules, taking in his broad shoulders, his battle-worn features. Is that what he told you? The centaur asks, a thin smile curling his lips. That it was fair. Hercules steps forward, his jaw tight. Who are you to question me? The centaur leader raises a hand, and the others tense, muscles rippling beneath their skin. We are the guardians of the forest, he says. We are those who hear the whispers of the rivers and the cries of the gods. Deianira's heart pounds in her chest. What do you want? The centaur's eyes lock onto the horn. Return what was stolen, he says, his voice low and ominous. Or face the wrath of the earth itself. Hercules lets out a sharp laugh, the sound harsh and cold. Achilles is a coward, he says, his hand tightening around the hilt of his club. He lost. He gave up his power. End of story. The centaur leader's eyes narrow, his nostrils flaring. You are a fool, he says. The river god's power was not his to give. It was a gift from the earth, from the gods. And you cannot take what belongs to the gods without consequence. Hercules steps closer, the ground trembling beneath his feet. Then take it, he says, voice dropping to a growl. If you think you can. Before the centaur can respond, the ground erupts. Vines burst from the soil, thick and twisted, snaking around Hercules' ankles and pulling him down. He struggles, muscles bulging, but the vines only tighten, their thorny tendrils digging into his skin. Deianira screams, reaching for the horn. But the centaur leader is faster. He lunges forward, his massive hand closing around her wrist, yanking her back. The horn falls from her grasp, tumbling to the ground with a dull, echoing thud. The air fills with the scent of wet earth and rotting leaves, the ground shivering beneath them. The centaur leader leans down, his face inches from Deianira's. The gods will have what was taken, he whispers, his breath hot against her skin. But Hercules is not done yet. With a roar, he flexes his legs, snapping the vines that bind him. He swings his club, the air whistling as it connects with the centaur leader's jaw. The centaur staggers back, blood streaming from his mouth. Deianira, Hercules shouts, grabbing her arm and pulling her to her feet. The horn. Deianira lunges forward, her fingers closing around the horn. The moment she touches it, the ground quakes violently, as if the earth itself is roaring in protest. The centaurs scatter, their hooves thundering against the ground as they retreat into the trees. Hercules and Deianira sprint in the opposite direction, the horn clutched tightly in Deianira's arms. The forest blurs around them, branches whipping at their faces, roots tangling around their ankles. The ground continues to shake, the trees swaying dangerously. Where are we going? Deianira cries, struggling to keep up.
Anywhere but here!
Hercules shouts, his voice barely audible over the roar of the earth. Behind them, the clearing collapses. The ground splits open, a gaping chasm swallowing the spot where they had stood just moments before. The trees tremble, their roots tearing free from the soil as the earth continues to shake. Hercules doesn't stop running. Neither does Deianira. But even as they sprint through the forest, branches snapping beneath their feet, the ground continues to tremble. The wind howls through the trees, carrying with it a sound that chills Deianira to the bone. A low, deep, resonant voice that seems to rise from the earth itself. Return what was stolen. Return it, or be buried with it. The ground finally steadies beneath their feet, but the air is still thick with the scent of churned earth and broken roots. Hercules and Deianira stagger to a stop, chests heaving, the horn cradled protectively in Deianira's arms. The forest around them is eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. Even the birds have fallen silent, as if the entire world is holding its breath. Hercules leans against a tree, wiping sweat from his brow. They came out of nowhere, he mutters, his jaw clenched. Centaurs don't usually wander this deep into the forest. Deianira swallows, her throat dry. They knew what the horn was, she says, staring down at the gleaming ivory. They said it was never Achilles to give. Hercules' eyes narrow. Then whose was it? Before Deianira can respond, the ground trembles again, just a subtle shiver beneath their feet, like a warning. The trees sway, their branches creaking. Deianira bites her lip, glancing nervously around. It's like the earth is alive. It's not the earth, Hercules says, pushing away from the tree. It's something beneath it. A shiver runs down Deianira's spine. Something that wants the horn back. Hercules takes a deep breath, his fists clenching. We need to find somewhere to hide. Somewhere the gods won't find us. Deianira's eyes widen. The gods. You think they're involved? Hercules grimaces. I think they're always involved. They press on, moving deeper into the forest. The trees grow denser, their trunks gnarled and twisted like ancient sentinels. The air is cooler here, the light dimmer. The canopy overhead blotting out most of the sun. It's as if they've stepped into another world, a darker, older one. Hours pass. The ground beneath their feet is soft and spongy, littered with fallen leaves that crunch underfoot. The air smells of moss and damp earth, and every now and then, Deianira thinks she hears whispers. Soft, indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. Are you sure we're going the right way? Deianira asks, her eyes darting nervously around. Hercules nods, his jaw set. There's a cave up ahead, he says. A place I hid out once during one of my labors. Deianira raises an eyebrow. You hid? Hercules' expression darkens. Let's just say, there are some things even a demigod can't fight head-on. They reach the cave just as the sky begins to darken, the setting sun casting long shadows through the trees. The entrance is narrow, little more than a jagged crack in a rocky outcrop, but inside, the space widens into a cavern, the ceiling high and domed, the walls slick with moisture. Deianira slumps against the wall, cradling the horn in her lap. What are we going to do? She asks, her voice small. If the gods want it back, how do we fight them? Hercules sits down beside her, his shoulders slumping. We don't, he says, running a hand through his tangled hair. We'll find a way to give it back without losing our lives. Deianira shudders, her fingers tightening around the horn. But what if they don't want it back? What if they want us to pay for taking it? Hercules opens his mouth to respond, but a sound cuts through the cave, a low, deep rumble that echoes through the stone walls. Deianira's breath catches in her throat. What was that? Hercules rises to his feet, his muscles tense. Stay behind me, he whispers. The rumbling grows louder, vibrating through the stone. Dust falls from the ceiling, tiny pebbles skittering across the floor. And then, from the mouth of the cave, a figure appears. A woman. She steps into the cave, her robes flowing like liquid silver, her hair long and dark, eyes the color of storm clouds. There is something otherworldly about her, something that makes the air grow colder, the shadows deepen. Hercules stiffens, his jaw clenched. Who are you? The woman tilts her head, her eyes drifting to the horn in Deianira's lap. You carry something that does not belong to you, she says, her voice smooth and lilting, like a lullaby sung over a grave. Deianira's heart races. Who are you? The woman smiles, her teeth white and sharp. I am Arethusa, she says. The river nymph. Deianira exchanges a glance with Hercules. A river nymph, like Achilles. Arethusa's smile widens. Achilles was a river god. But I am not like him. I am older. Much older. Hercules steps forward, his fists clenched. What do you want? Arethusa's eyes flash. What was stolen? Deianira clutches the horn tighter. It wasn't stolen. Achilles lost it in a fight. Arethusa laughs, the sound echoing around the cave like 1,000 whispers. You think Achilles owned it? He was a thief, a liar who claimed the horn as his own. But it belongs to the earth, to the rivers, to the very roots of the world. Deianira's hands tremble. What happens if we keep it? Arethusa steps closer, the air growing colder with each step. Then the rivers will dry. The trees will wither. The ground will crack open, and all the abundance that once flowed from the earth will cease. Hercules clenches his jaw. And if we give it back? Arethusa's eyes narrow. Then you live. Deianira swallows, her heart pounding in her chest. But what about Achilles? Arethusa's expression hardens. Achilles has already paid for his sins. The gods took back what he stole. But they have yet to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. Deianira glances down at the horn, its smooth surface warm against her skin. If we give it back, she says, her voice trembling, will you leave us alone? Arethusa's gaze softens, just a fraction. Perhaps, she says, her voice a low, ominous purr. But only if you give it back willingly. Hercules steps forward, his shoulders squared. And if we don't? Arethusa's eyes darken, the storm clouds within them churning violently. Then the rivers will rise, the earth will quake, and you will be buried beneath the weight of what you tried to steal. The cave falls silent, the air heavy and still. Deianira and Hercules exchange a long, tense look, the horn gleaming between them like a ghostly relic. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, and somewhere, far off in the distance, the river Achelous rumbles, its waters surging as if in anticipation, because the gods are watching, and they are not known for their patience. Hours pass. The cave grows colder, the air thick and heavy with the scent of damp stone and wet earth. Deianira sits against the wall, the horn resting in her lap like a restless child. Hercules paces back and forth, his jaw clenched, his fists opening and closing as if he's itching for a fight. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, a constant, mournful wail. Arethusa is gone. She vanished as quickly as she appeared, slipping away into the shadows with a final warning echoing in their ears. Return what was stolen, or be buried beneath it. The Deianira shivers, pulling her knees to her chest. What are we going to do? She whispers. Hercules stops pacing, his gaze fixed on the entrance of the cave. We're not giving it back, he says, his voice low and firm. Deianira's eyes widen. But if we don't? If we do? Hercules interrupts. Then what was it all for? The fight, the pain, the blood. I didn't risk my life to hand it over to some vengeful nymph. Deianira swallows, her throat dry. But if what she said is true, if the earth starts to wither, if the rivers dry up, Hercules' jaw tightens. It's not true, he says, but the words sound hollow, even to him. A silence falls between them, heavy and tense. The horn gleams in the dim light, its smooth surface almost luminous. Deianira stares at it, her fingers tracing the curve of its spiral. It doesn't feel like a curse. She murmurs. It feels oh warm. Hercules glances at her. What do you mean? Deianira closes her eyes, her hand resting on the horn. It's like it's pulsing, she says, her brow furrowing. Like a heartbeat, like it's alive. Hercules steps closer, his brow furrowed. Alive. Deianira nods, her eyes still closed. I can feel it. It's like it's calling to me. Hercules' mouth tightens. Calling to you. Or calling to them. Deianira's eyes fly open. The cave seems darker now, the shadows deeper, the air colder. Outside the wind rises, a low keening wail that sounds almost like a scream. And then they hear it, a voice. Faint, but unmistakable. A deep, resonant voice echoing through the cave, carried on the wind. Deianira gasps, her fingers tightening around the horn. Did you hear that? Hercules nods, his muscles coiled like a spring. Stay behind me. But the voice grows louder, more insistent. It fills the cave, reverberating off the stone walls, wrapping around them like a shroud. Deianira, return what is not yours. Deianira's breath comes in short, shallow gasps. It knows my name, she whispers. Hercules raises his club, his eyes scanning the darkness. Show yourself! He roars, his voice echoing through the cave. But no one appears. The wind continues to howl, the voice rising and falling like a chant. Deianira, and then, as suddenly as it began, the wind dies. The cave falls silent. The air hangs heavy, still and oppressive. Deianira slumps against the wall, her eyes wide and haunted. It's not going to stop, she says, her voice trembling. They're going to keep coming for it. For us. Hercules' jaw clenches. Let them come. Deianira shakes her head. You don't understand. It's not just the centaurs. It's the earth, the rivers, the gods. We're not fighting one enemy. We're fighting everything. Hercules turns away, his fists clenched. I can't just hand it over, he says, his voice tight. Not after everything I did to get it. Deianira watches him, her heart aching. Is it really worth it? Hercules doesn't answer. He just stares into the darkness, his eyes hard and unblinking. The hours drag by. The cave grows colder, the air heavy and stale. Deianira tries to sleep, but every time she closes her eyes, she hears the voice, calling to her, whispering her name, demanding what she carries. The horn grows warmer, almost hot against her skin. She pulls it closer, her fingers running over its smooth surface, feeling the pulse beneath her fingertips. It's not just a horn, it's a piece of a god, a living, breathing fragment of Achelous himself. And it wants to go home. In the distance, a sound rises, a low, deep rumble, like thunder rolling through the earth. The ground trembles, the walls of the cave shuddering as dust falls from the ceiling. Hercules bolts to his feet, eyes wide. What now? Deianira struggles to her feet, clutching the horn. The ground shakes harder, stones tumbling from the ceiling, the air filling with dust and grit. And then the ground splits open. A jagged crack snakes through the floor, widening with each tremor. From the depths of the earth, a dark, viscous liquid begins to ooze, a thick, tar-like substance that smells of rotting leaves and stagnant water. Deianira gasps, stumbling back. What is that? Hercules grabs her arm, pulling her away from the widening chasm. It's the river, he says, his eyes wild. Achilles. The black liquid bubbles up, hissing and steaming as it spreads across the cave floor. It pools around their feet, cold and thick, seeping into their sandals. The air grows heavy, the scent of decay and death choking them. And then the liquid rises, taking shape. It coils and writhers like a snake, twisting and contorting until it forms a towering figure. A man-shaped shadow with eyes as dark and bottomless as a river in winter. Achilles. His face is a mask of fury, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the horn in Deianira's hands. You stole from me, he says, his voice like the crash of waves against stone. You tore from me what was mine. Deianira trembles, the horn slipping from her grasp. I didn't. It was him. Hercules shouts, stepping forward, his chest heaving. I took it. It was a fair fight. Achilles' eyes flick to Hercules, his expression hardening. Fair. He growls, his voice rumbling like a landslide. You call it fair to steal from a god. The ground shakes, the walls of the cave trembling as Achilles' fury mounts. The black liquid surges higher, rising around their ankles, thick and suffocating. Hercules raises his club, his muscles tense. You lost. You were weak. Achilles' jaw clenches. And you will pay for your arrogance. The black liquid rises higher, swirling around their knees, pulling at them like a living tide. Deianira screams, her arms flailing as the liquid pulls her down, dragging her closer to the chasm. Hercules lunges forward, grabbing her hand, his muscles straining as he fights against the pull. Hold on, he shouts, his face contorted with effort. Achilles watches them, his eyes cold and merciless. Return what you stole, he says, his voice echoing through the cave. Or drown in the river of your own making. The liquid surges higher, rising to their waists, cold and unyielding. And as they struggle to stay afloat, Achilles' eyes gleam with dark, terrible satisfaction. Because the gods are not done with them yet. The cold liquid swirls around your legs, sucking at your clothes and skin like a slow, relentless tide. You try to pull away, but the river's grasp is unyielding. The cave trembles with the rage of a god scorned, and above the roar of the flowing water, you can almost hear the earth itself groaning in pain. Hercules grips your hand tightly, his muscles bulging as he strains against the current. You feel his desperation, that raw human determination mixed with a dash of stubborn pride. That, I'm Hercules, and I don't give up, vibe that usually works, except maybe not right now. The river god's eyes burn into you both, fierce as molten lava. Return the horn, Achilles demands, his voice like the crash of thunder against cliffs, or perish in the depths of your own defiance. You glance down at the horn nestled against your chest, the same horn that seemed warm and pulsing earlier. It feels almost alive, as if whispering promises of power and secrets only you can hear. You realize this isn't just a battle over a piece of ivory, it's a conflict woven into the very fabric of nature itself, between mortals and gods, between stubborn pride and ancient raw power. Hercules grits his teeth, refusing to relent. This isn't just about you, he growls. The horn represents something more, power, yes, but also freedom. You can't own nature, Achilles. It belongs to all of us. Achilles' form shifts in the swirling water, ripples distorting his godly visage. Freedom? He hisses. You mortals always confuse chaos for freedom. The ground beneath you quakes again, the cave walls shedding dust and tiny stones. Somewhere deep inside, you feel a tug, a silent plea from the river itself, a reminder that this divine fury isn't just for show. The horn is more than a prize. It is a symbol of the eternal struggle between order and wildness, between civilization's fragile grip and nature's relentless reclaiming. Suddenly, the current shifts, tugging Hercules and you toward the chasm's edge. You instinctively cling to him, but the grip is weakening. Panic rises, a sensation you don't expect to feel with Hercules by your side. Even heroes can get scared when gods are involved. And here's a fun, quirky tidbit. Historians still argue whether Achilles River was based on an actual river in Greece, or if he's a mythic personification invented to explain unpredictable floods. Either way, you can't help but feel like you're living inside a flood story, except it's 100% real and way more terrifying. Hercules shouts, Deianira! Hold tight, as he heaves you back from the swirling liquid. His grip tightens, veins bulging, and for a moment, you see that even the strongest men aren't invincible, especially against divine wrath. As you struggle against the pull, a sudden calm washes over the cave. The river god's form begins to shrink, the black liquid receding like a tide pulling back from the shore. Achilles' voice softens, almost wistful. The horn was never meant to be taken lightly, mortal. You gasp, chest heaving, and look up to see Hercules kneeling, sweat mingling with dust on his skin. Then what do you want? He asks, voice rough but steady. Achilles' shadow fades, but the warning remains clear: there's a price to pay, and the battle is far from over. You realize that sometimes, the god's wrath isn't just punishment. It's a lesson wrapped in fury, a reminder of respect for forces beyond human control. And here's a little joke to lighten things up. Why don't gods play cards? Because they always want to deal with the divine hand. Yep, dad jokes in a mythological cave. Try not to laugh too hard. You wipe your dripping hair from your face, still gripping the horn. So what now? You ask Hercules, who just shakes his head with a tired smile. Now, he says, we figure out how to wrestle a river god. The air in the cave thickens, dense with moisture and tension. You feel the horn's faint pulse beneath your palm, steady but insistent, like a heartbeat tethered to the ancient river god's essence. Hercules stands, dusting dirt from his tunic, his eyes sharp but wary. You can almost hear the creak of his legendary resolve stretching thin, but it won't snap just yet. Outside, the wild wind roars back, a reminder that the natural world beyond the cave is watching, waiting, its judgment hanging heavy like fog on a cold morning. You take a breath and steel yourself. Wrestling a river god sounds ridiculous, like a bedtime story for children hopped up on too much honey. But here you are, tangled in divine wrath with a god who controls water itself. Historians still argue whether Hercules' wrestling match with Achilles actually took place in one of his 12 labors, or was a separate heroic feat, added later to his legend to explain natural phenomena. Either way, the tale has stuck around longer than most celebrity scandals, and you're about to live through its chaos firsthand. Hercules eyes the horn again, weighing it like it's a secret weapon or a ticking time bomb. If we're going to face a river god, we'll need a plan, he mutters, voice low. You nod, because as thrilling as spontaneous divine wrestling sounds, some preparation would help. Maybe a quick YouTube tutorial titled, How to Wrestle a River God 101, would have been useful, if only such a thing existed. You remember a curious tidbit from your days reading dusty scrolls in a forgotten library. Achilles was known to transform into various water creatures during battles. Sometimes a bull, sometimes a serpent, sometimes just flowing water itself. So, you'll have to be ready for anything. No predictable wrestling moves here. Hercules steps toward the cave mouth, peering into the night. He won't give up easily. If the horn belongs to him, he'll fight for it with everything he's got. You laugh dryly. Yeah, I noticed. Like trying to take candy from a kid with superpowers. Hercules cracks a smile. Or like trying to win an argument with a river. It always finds a way to flow back around you. The night air is crisp and sharp against your skin. You feel a strange mix of fear and excitement, a cocktail of adrenaline and awe. What's about to happen might be one of those moments people whisper about in quiet corners, or maybe it's just the start of another legend no one will believe. You glance at the horn once more. Its surface gleams like liquid moonlight, a relic holding the power of a god and the promise of untold mysteries. You tuck it close to your side. Ready? Hercules asks, his voice steady. You nod, tightening your grip on the horn and stepping outside the cave into the dark night, where the river waits and the battle looms. Outside the cave, the night feels alive with a quiet menace. The moon hangs low, casting pale silver light over the rushing river that snakes through the valley. The water gleams like a sheet of glass, but you know better. Beneath that smooth surface lurks the power of Achilles himself, waiting, watching, ready to strike. You trudge forward, Hercules beside you, muscles coiled and ready. The air is thick with the scent of wet stone and wildflowers, a strange mixture that somehow feels fitting for a battle against a river god. You can almost hear the faint murmur of the river, like a whisper teasing the edges of your hearing, urging you closer to the fight. Hercules kneels by the riverbank, testing the water with his hand. This river is no ordinary stream, he says. It's alive, and it remembers. You nod, the horn tucked securely under your arm. The pulse you felt inside the cave seems to sync with the river's flow now. A reminder that this isn't just a fight over a prize, but a clash of wills between mortal and divine. Here's a quirky detail: ancient Greeks believed that rivers could speak through their sounds and currents, and priests sometimes interpreted these murmurs as divine messages. So, if you think you hear the river gossiping about you, it's probably just the water, or maybe not. Hercules stands, his eyes scanning the river's surface. One need to be ready for anything. Achilles can change shape. Bull, serpent, or just a raging current. You swallow, trying to steady your nerves. Do you think we'll really wrestle a river? Like physically? He smirks. When you're up against a god, expect the unexpected. And expect to get wet. The river suddenly churns, a swirl of foam and spray erupting from the depths. From the frothy surface, Achilles emerges, his form shifting between a mighty bull and a serpent with scales glinting like wet obsidian. His eyes glow with an ancient fury, fixed on the horn you clutch. Return what belongs to me. His voice rumbles like a waterfall crashing over rocks. Or face the river's wrath. A Hercules steps forward, his club raised. I didn't steal anything from a god, he replies firmly. I earned this. Achilles laughs, a deep, resonant sound that shakes the riverbank. Pride before the flood, mortal. You feel the tension crackling in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. The river god lunges, transforming into a powerful bull with horns that gleam like polished ivory, charging toward Hercules. The fight begins. The battle rages under the moon's watchful eye. The river god's bull form crashing against Hercules like a tidal wave made flesh. You stand on the riverbank, heart pounding, water spraying in cold, relentless sheets, soaking you to the bone. The smell of wet earth, sweat, and ozone fills the air. The scent of a fight that's been brewing since time immemorial. You watch as Hercules grapples with the enormous bull, muscles straining like cables under tension. Every punch, every shove sends ripples through the water, and the river roars in approval or protest. It's hard to say. Achilles' eyes flash with a wild intelligence, as if he's enjoying the contest as much as he's angry. Historians still argue whether Hercules' battle with Achilles was a symbolic myth to explain river floods, or an actual tale added to his legend to showcase his heroic strength. Either way, the imagery sticks: a mortal wrestling, the very embodiment of nature's wildness. At one point, the river god shifts his form mid-fight, the bull melting into a gigantic serpent that coils and strikes with lightning speed. Hercules dodges, narrowly avoiding fangs and snapping jaws. You can't help but admire his reflexes, or curse your own for standing so close. Achilles' voice echoes across the water, deep and rumbling. Give me the horn. It belongs to the river, to the wildness that you humans can never tame. Hercules snarls. I'll never give up what's been earned through struggle. You notice the horn pulsing in your grip, glowing faintly like a beacon amid the chaos. It seems to respond to the fight, its power humming in sync with Hercules' determination. You wonder if the horn itself is alive, or if you're just imagining things after too much time in a damp cave. A funny thought crosses your mind. What if the river god is just upset because he lost his favorite drinking horn? Maybe that's the real reason for the fight. The battle's intensity doesn't waver, but you start to notice something subtle. The river god's movements become slower, less fierce, as if Hercules' relentless grip is wearing down divine patience. Still, Achilles won't yield easily. The river's fury is ancient and deep, not something that bends with a simple wrestler's strength. You brace yourself for the next move, knowing this is a fight that could change the balance between mortal and divine forever. The river god's strength wanes, but his fury remains, a simmering storm beneath the surface. Hercules tightens his grip on the bull form of Achilles, muscles trembling but unwavering. You can see the strain in every sinew, every grunt as the two forces struggle for supremacy. The horn pulses brighter now, almost guiding your hands as you help steady the balance. You notice the river's water slowing its frantic rush, as if it's holding its breath along with you. The storm of the fight is becoming a test of endurance, a contest of wills that echoes through the valley like the distant roar of thunder. Here's an intriguing historical note. The horn that Hercules wrestled from Achilles was said to become the cornucopia, or horn of plenty, symbolizing abundance and nourishment. Historians still argue whether this transformation is metaphorical or a later addition to the myth to explain agricultural symbols in ancient Greece. Either way, the horn carries immense significance beyond just being a trophy. You glance at Hercules' face, streaked with dirt and sweat, a mixture of exhaustion and determination painted there. His voice is a low growl, You can fight forever, river god, but you'll never break me. A chalice roars and the water around you surges, swirling into a whirlpool that threatens to pull you both in. You clutch the horn tighter, feeling its power steadying your footing. The cave's earlier tremors echo in your ears, reminding you of the fragile line between triumph and disaster. A sudden shift Achilles form softens, the bull's fierce horns receding into the shimmering shape of a river's gentle flow. His voice lowers, almost regretful. You have proven your strength, Hercules, but remember, the river always flows back, and it never forgets. Hercules releases the grip slowly, nodding. The horn gleams with newfound brilliance, a silent testament to the battle fought and won. You feel the river's tension ease, the wildness settling like the last breath of a storm. The river god's presence fades, leaving behind the peaceful murmur of water over stones. And here's a light moment. You wonder if the river god appreciates a good sportsmanship handshake, or if he's too watery for handshakes altogether. Maybe a splash would do. The fight is over, but the lesson lingers. Sometimes strength is about knowing when to hold on, and when to let go. The first light of dawn spills softly over the valley, painting the river's surface with hues of pink and gold. The wild roar of the night's battle fades into a gentle murmur, like a lullaby sung by the river itself. You stand beside Hercules, both of you tired, soaked, and somehow different, marked by an experience that blurs the line between myth and reality. The horn in your hands glows faintly, a reminder of the power wrestled from the river god and the price paid in sweat and patience. It's not just a trophy, it's a symbol of the fragile truce between mortal courage and divine will. You notice the calm now settling over the land, the birds beginning their morning songs, the breeze carrying fresh scents of pine and damp earth. The world feels softer, quieter, as if holding its breath after witnessing something extraordinary. Hercules sighs, a sound heavy with relief and something like reverence. The river will remember this night, he says quietly. But so will we. There's a strange peace in those words, a comfort in knowing that even the wildest forces can be met with respect and resolve. It reminds you that every legend has its roots in moments like these, moments of struggle, connection, and the unyielding human spirit. Historians still debate whether the wrestling match with Achilles symbolizes man's conquest over nature or a reminder of our place within it. Either way, it's a story that continues to ripple through time, just like the river itself. You run your fingers over the horn's smooth surface, feeling the warmth still lingering there. A soft chuckle escapes you. So, next time you find yourself wrestling a river god, maybe bring a towel. Hercules laughs, the sound deep and genuine, echoing through the valley as the sun rises higher. And here's a final thought in the end. Maybe the real power isn't the horn, or the god, or even Hercules' strength, but the stories we carry with us, that flow like rivers through our lives, shaping who we are and who we might become. You take a deep breath, feeling the calm settle in your chest like a gentle tide. The adventure is over, but its lessons will linger, soft and steady, as you step forward into the waking world.